My name is Howard, and I work at a small tech company in Portland. The pay is not amazing, but it is steady. 3 months ago, my grandmother Eleanor passed away, leaving me $250,000. It was everything she had saved, her entire life. I felt honored and humbled. I had plans to buy a modest house, maybe start building toward the family life Sarah and I talked about late at night. But my older brother Brandon and his fiancée Amber had other ideas. They believed they deserved that money more than I did. I never imagined my own family would try to steal what my grandmother left specifically for me. But when they crossed the line, I had to make a choice that changed everything. Before we dive into what happened, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this story gets intense, and you will want to hear how I handled it when my own blood turned against me. Trust me, what comes next is something I never saw coming. Let me take you back to the beginning so you understand how we got here. My relationship with Grandma Eleanor was special. She lived just 15 minutes from my apartment, and I made it a point to visit her every single week. We would sit in her kitchen drinking tea she brewed too strong, and she would tell me stories about growing up during harder times. She taught me about the value of money, about patience, about planning for the future, instead of spending on fleeting things. I helped her with whatever she needed. I fixed her computer when it acted up, took her grocery shopping every Saturday morning, drove her to doctor appointments, and just kept her company. She was not just my grandmother. She was my friend. Brandon, on the other hand, rarely came around. He is 3 years older than me, works as a sales manager at some corporate firm, and always seemed too busy for family visits. Growing up, we were close. We played basketball in the driveway, shared a bedroom until I turned 12, stayed up late talking about girls and dreams. But as we got older, something shifted. Brandon became the golden child in our parents' eyes. He got the better grades, the better job, the more attention. I became the second son, the one who was just there. I did not resent him for it. I accepted my role. That is just how things were. When Grandma Eleanor passed, I was devastated. The funeral was small and quiet, just how she would have wanted it. A week later, her lawyer called us all into his office to read the will. I sat between my parents Martin and Diane with Brandon across the table. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. Most of the estate, $250,000, was left to me. Brandon received a family ring that had belonged to our grandfather and $5,000. Other small items were divided among cousins. The room went silent. I could not breathe. I looked at the lawyer, certain he had made a mistake, but he just nodded at me with a sad smile. Grandma Eleanor had written in her will that I had been there for her when she needed someone, and she wanted me to have a strong foundation for my future. Brandon's face was blank, but his eyes were cold. My parents said nothing, but I could feel their disappointment radiating across the table. The air felt thick. Nobody congratulated me. Nobody said anything. We just left. That first week after the reading, I was in shock. $250,000. It felt surreal. I started making plans immediately. I met with a financial advisor, opened a high-yield savings account, and began looking at houses in the suburbs. Nothing fancy, just a 3-bedroom place with a small yard where Sarah and I could start our life together. We had been dating for 2 years, and we both knew marriage was on the horizon. I also set aside money for our future wedding, allocated some for investment, and kept an emergency fund. I felt responsible, like I was honoring what Grandma Eleanor wanted for me. Then Brandon called. His voice sounded friendly, almost too friendly. He congratulated me on the inheritance and asked how I was planning to use it. I told him about the house, about wanting to build something stable. He listened, then casually mentioned that his wedding to Amber was coming up in 2 months. He said they were having some financial trouble pulling together everything they wanted. I felt a knot form in my stomach, but I just said I hoped it worked out. He thanked me and hung up. I thought that was the end of it. 3 days later, Brandon texted asking if I wanted to grab coffee. He suggested this place we used to go to as kids, a little shop near the park where we used to shoot hoops. I agreed, thinking maybe he wanted to reconnect to talk about Grandma Eleanor, to grieve together. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting in the corner booth with 2 cups in front of him. He smiled and waved me over. We talked about work, about the weather, about nothing important. Then he shifted in his seat and leaned forward. He started talking about his wedding. He described how Amber had always dreamed of this huge celebration by the ocean with 300 guests, a live band, gourmet food, and flowers everywhere. He said they had already spent $50,000 and still needed another $70,000 to make it happen. Then he asked. He said he needed to borrow $50,000 from me. He promised he would pay me back within a year. He called it a once-in-a-lifetime event. He reminded me that we were family, that he would do the same for me. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. He said Grandma Eleanor would have wanted us to help each other. I felt my throat tighten. I did not know what to say. I told him I needed time to think about it. His face fell. He looked disappointed, maybe even angry. He stood up, said he understood, and left without finishing his coffee. I drove home in silence. When I told Sarah what happened, she was furious. She reminded me that we had plans, that the house we wanted required that money, that this was our future. I felt torn. Brandon was my brother, but $50,000 was a huge amount. I decided to compromise. I called Brandon the next day and offered to give him $10,000 as a gift, not a loan. I explained that I needed the rest for the house. I tried to sound kind, tried to keep the peace. He did not take it well. There was silence on the other end of the line for several seconds. Then his voice came back sharp and cold. He said he could not believe how selfish I was being. He said $10,000 was insulting, that it would not even cover the floral arrangements. He told me that after everything our parents had done for me, this was how I repaid the family. Then he hung up. I stood there holding the phone, feeling like I had been punched in the chest. That night my mother called. Her voice was soft, wounded. She said Brandon had told her I refused to help him. She did not yell. She just sounded so disappointed. She reminded me that Brandon was my older brother, that he had always looked out for me when we were kids. She said Grandma Eleanor would be so sad to see us fighting over money. She told me weddings only happen once, but I could buy a house any time. I tried to explain my side, but she was not listening. She just kept saying I was being selfish, that family comes first. When I would not change my mind, she said she had to go and hung up. An hour later, my father called. His tone was different. He was stern, almost angry. He told me that Brandon had sacrificed a lot for this family over the years, though he never said what exactly. He said I owed it to Brandon to help him out. He did not ask. He told me to think about what I was doing, to reconsider. When I said no, he got quiet, then said he was disappointed in me. That hurt more than anything. The next week I ran into Amber at the grocery store. I do not think it was an accident. She was waiting near the entrance, and when she saw me, she walked right over. She asked if we could talk. I wanted to say no, but I did not want to seem rude. She started telling me about her dream wedding, how she had been planning it since she was a little girl. She said she and Brandon had already sent out invitations and booked the venue. Deposits were paid. Contracts were signed. She said if they had to cancel or downsize, it would be my fault. Then she started crying right there in the middle of the store. She said she thought I would be happy for them, that Brandon always talked about how close we were as brothers. She said Brandon's family would think she was not good enough if the wedding was not perfect. I felt ambushed. I told her I was sorry, but I could not give them that kind of money. She wiped her eyes and walked away without another word. I left my cart right there and went home. A few days later, my parents invited me to dinner. They said it was just a family meal, nothing special. When I arrived, Brandon and Amber were already there. I should have known. The tension was immediate. My mother had cooked my favorite meal, pot roast with mashed potatoes, which only made me feel more guilty. We ate in near silence. After we finished the main course, Brandon cleared his throat. He said we needed to talk about the elephant in the room. He said he did not understand why I was refusing to help him. He said Grandma Eleanor left me all that money and I could not even spare some for my own brother's wedding. Amber started crying again. She said she had been dreaming of this day since she was a little girl. She said her parents were both gone, she had no one else, and she thought Brandon's family would become her family. My mother put her arm around Amber and looked at me with such disappointment. She said sometimes we have to put family first. She said I was young and had plenty of time to buy a house, but Brandon and Amber needed this now. My father spoke up next. His voice had that tone he used when we were kids, and he was laying down the law. He said he was not asking me, he was telling me as my father. He said I would help my brother with at least $70,000, and that was the right thing to do. I felt like the walls were closing in. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for me to fold. I looked at Brandon. He would not meet my eyes. I realized this had all been planned. They had coordinated this ambush to pressure me into giving up my inheritance. I stood up. My hands were shaking. I said I was sorry, but that money was left to me. Grandma Eleanor wanted me to have it for my future. I said I loved them all, but I could not do this. Then I walked out. Behind me, I heard my mother gasp and my father shout my name, but I did not stop. I got in my car and drove away, my heart pounding in my chest. On the way home, I could barely see the road through my tears. I felt guilty, angry, and confused all at once. When I got home, Sarah held me while I cried. She told me I had done the right thing, that I could not let them bully me into giving up what was mine. I wanted to believe her. I thought maybe after some time my family would calm down and understand. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. For a week, nobody contacted me. No calls, no texts, nothing. It was eerie. I felt relieved, but also sad. I missed my family, even though they had hurt me. Sarah and I kept moving forward with our plans.